Hello everyone, so let us look at the solutions of class 8 biology annual exam questions. Let us start with the multiple choice questions first. So first of all, which of the following is used by the honeybees to produce honey? It is nectar. Which of these diseases is not caused by mosquitoes? It is influenza. Cranial nerves emerge from brain. Blockage of which artery causes heart attack? It is coronary artery, because that is the artery that supplies blood to the heart. You can tackle stress by which of these? Meditation, yoga, sports, all of them. The example of an omnivore is a crow. Which of the following is not a biotic component? Of course, it is water. It is non-living. Spirogyra reproduces by fragmentation. An incomplete flower that bears only gynoecium is called as a pistillate flower. Insulin is secreted by pancreas. So these are the MCQs and these are the correct answers for the MCQs. Now let us look at the next part, which is fill in the blanks. Dash is a place where bees are kept. The answer is apiary. Dash is the ability of body to fight against diseases. It is immunity. Membrane layers covering the brain are called, many of you got this wrong, it is meninges. The membranes which cover the brain, they are called as meninges. The outer double membrane of the heart is, let me write the answer over here, it is pericardium. This is the outer covering of the heart. The nerve impulse is transmitted across the synapse by chemicals called as, now many of you have written neurotransmitters. That is also correct, but the actual name of the chemical is acetylcholine or acetylcholine. This is the name of the chemical, specific chemical which helps to transmit the nerve impulses through the synapse. So either of them, if you have written, they are correct. Alright, so now let us look at the next part. The protruding part of throat in adolescent boys, it is known as the Adam's apple. The artery carrying carbon dioxide rich blood to the lungs, it is the pulmonary artery. Part of the brain that connects it to the spinal cord. Now what part of the brain connects it to the spinal cord? It is medulla oblongata. It is the lowest part of the brain which connects it to the spinal cord. The emergency care or treatment given to an ill or injured person, all of us know it is first aid. Master gland in the humans, it is of course pituitary gland. Now let us look at the full forms of these. Many of you committed errors with this, so you need to get it right. So when we are talking about HIV, it is human immunodeficiency virus. Deficiency virus, yes. AIDS. So now when we are talking about AIDS, it is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Right. Syndrome is the symptom or the causative effect. Now BCG, if you are talking about, BCG is, let me write it over here, it is Bacillus calmette, querin. This is the full form of BCG. Now, MMR, if you are talking about, it is measles, mumps and rubella. These are the diseases against which this vaccine is given. BCG is the same. It is named, but this is named, this is BCG is for basically tuberculosis. So this is the bacteria name is Bacillus, but this Calmette-Guerin, this goes after the names of the scientist. Now if you're talking about DPT, it is again for 3 diseases: diphtheria, pertussis, diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. These are the 3 diseases for which this DPT vaccine. So these 3 are the vaccines. Now let us talk about the differentiate between blood and lymph according to the definition. Now blood is a fluid connective tissue. Both of them are fluid connective tissue. So how do we differentiate between them? So blood is a fluid connective tissue which is red in color, and it is responsible for transporting nutrients and red colored connective tissue. As I said, both of them. So blood is a fluid connective tissue which is red in color and transports oxygen and nutrients to all the cells, right? But when we talk about lymph, it is a fluid connective tissue which is colorless or pale yellow colored if you wish to be too specific. So it responsible for transporting nutrients to, or it is a colorless connective tissue which is found in spaces between cells where blood cannot reach, right? So it is responsible for transporting the nutrients to those areas where blood cannot reach, because blood will reach only inside the cell. So what about the spaces between the cells and tissues? How do we collect waste from those areas or provide nutrients to those areas? So that is where the lymph comes into being. Now let us talk about the location of thyroid gland and the adrenal gland. So if you look at the location of the thyroid gland is located on either side of trachea or neck, whereas the adrenal gland, it is located on top of the kidneys, right? So that is where these glands are located. Flora and fauna definition. So wherever we are talking about flora, we are talking about the plant life, and when we are talking about fauna, we are talking about the animal life. Scavengers and detritivores, you had to give only examples for them. So for scavengers, you can give examples like hyena, then jackal. These are all vultures, eagle, and so on. These are the examples of scavengers. And then for detritivores, we have earthworm, then slugs, millipedes, and also some bacteria, right? So those are the examples of scavengers and detritivores. Now let us talk about binary and multiple fission. Now fission, you know, it means breaking. So whenever a cell breaks into 2 daughter cells, it is called as binary fission. When it breaks into 4 or more daughter cells, it is called as multiple fission. When the cell divides into 2 daughter cells, it is called as binary fission. When it divides into 4 or more daughter cells, it is called as multiple fission. Now let us come to the next part where it says say true or false and correct the false statements. Pollen grains are male gametes. True, absolutely true. Endocrine glands have ducts that secrete hormones. No, endocrine glands are ductless glands, right? Atrium has thick walls. No, ventricles have thick walls. Atria are thin walled, whereas ventricles have thick walls. Spinal nerves emerge from the brain. No, spinal nerves either emerge from the spine, or over here you can write spine, or if you're correcting this you can write cranial nerves emerge from the brain. Measles is a bacterial disease. No, it is a viral disease, right? Now let us come to give reasons for the following. So first one, voice of adolescent boys becomes hoarse. Why does it become hoarse? Because the larynx grows in size. Larynx or the voice box grows in size, as a result of which the voice of the boys, it becomes hoarse. Infected needles should not be used in blood transfusion. Yes, because many illnesses like HIV and hepatitis, they can be transmitted through infected needles to a perfectly healthy person. So the needles must be properly sterilized, or we should use these disposable needles whenever there is blood transfusion. Adrenaline triggers a fight or flight reaction. Now, adrenaline is an emergency hormone, right? So this hormone, whenever it is secreted, it will let us act according to the situation, where we need to get away from the situation or we need to stay there and handle the situation. So that is why this emergency hormone, adrenaline, whenever it is triggered, it is to help us handle the emergency situation by either staying over there or going away from that situation. Diabetic patients pass urine frequently. Now what happens in diabetes is this glycogen and fat, they start getting converted to glucose, right? As a result of which the glucose level in the urine, it starts to grow. Because of this, they need the urge to pass the urine frequently and also in larger amounts. Now let us talk about the last statement. Food web is important in an ecosystem. Now what happens in a food web is, we know that it is made up of several interconnected food chains, right? So what is a food web made up of? Food web is made up of several interconnected food chains. So that means there are several options available for the organisms to obtain their food. So the organisms are protected from starvation, first and foremost. Protected from starvation. That means no one goes hungry because they have other options to eat their food as well. Then balance in the population is maintained. You could have written, you could write any of these reasons and it would be perfectly okay. The balance in population is maintained also. The stability to any species or stability in any population is guaranteed, because it's not like one specific species is feeding on them only consistently. So stability of species is ensured, it is maintained, as well as because the stability is maintained, so extinction threat is avoided. So there is no extinction threat over there. Extinction threat is avoided, right? So any of these reasons you could have given for this statement. Now let us talk about the next question. Answer the following questions. Define seed germination. So what is seed germination? When the seed develops into let us take this up. Seed develops into a new plant, right? into a new plant. How does it develop? With optimum conditions. Now, what would these optimum conditions be? These optimum conditions would be right temperature, right amount of humidity, and so on. Right amount of food, sunlight, and stuff like that. So, that is what is termed as seed germination. What is asexual reproduction? In asexual reproduction, when only one parent gives rise to the offsprings, one parent is needed to produce offsprings, right? Produce offsprings. That is the next generation. That is termed as an asexual reproduction. State the method of reproduction in planaria and hydria. So in planaria, we have what type of reproduction takes place in planaria? It is regeneration. In planaria, it is regeneration, and hydra, it is budding. Hydra reproduces by budding. State two characteristics of wind pollinated flowers. So now, many of you wrote that the stigma is sticky. No, the stigma is not sticky. It is sticky in insect pollination flowers. In wind pollination flowers, the stigma is feathery. It is long and feathery so that it can trap the pollens which are flying around or which are just carried across through the wind. So stigma is feathery and the pollens are and the pollens are very light. Pollens are very light and produced in large numbers. So they are light as well as they are produced in very large numbers, because many of them might get lost as they are carried across by the wind. So they are produced in very large numbers. Okay, so those would be the two characters of wind pollinated flowers. Others, you can say that the flowers are dull and small because they are not looking to bring about or attract insects for their pollination. So they are generally small and very dull colored. Let us talk about state two functions of lymph. First and foremost, the lymph carries WBC. So these white blood cells, as we know, they are the soldiers of our body. So they help us to fight infection first and foremost. And then, as I was saying earlier on as well, that it helps in transportation of oxygen and nutrients to those parts. So it transports nutrients and oxygen. It also carries oxygen. Transport nutrients and oxygen to those parts. Basically it is nutrients to those parts. Oxygen, I do not know, it might be in very less quantity because respiration is not happening outside the cell, so oxygen is not much required over there. So oxygen to those parts where blood cannot reach. That is, what were those places? Those places are the interstitial spaces. That is the spaces between the cells in the tissue. So those places, this lymph brings about carries these materials which need to be taken, and also it helps in the removal of wastes from these regions. Right, whatever waste is present in the blood, that will be taken care, present inside the cell, that would be taken care of by the blood itself. But the waste which is present in these interstitial spaces, this waste is removed by the lymph. State 3 disadvantages of vegetative propagation. Now let us talk about what are the disadvantages of vegetative propagation. First and foremost, when we talk about vegetative propagation, we find that the new plants, because they are very similar to their parent plants, they lose their vigor. They are bringing about the same genes, exactly the same genes from the parents, so they can lose their vigor, as in they might not grow in as lush a manner as the other crop, where it is growing through the non-vegetative means. It grows in a more luscious manner. Then there can be an overcrowding of plants because they are growing in the same area, so there is a struggle for survival. And then because there is less space over here where they are growing, and there is a deficiency of nutrients, so that is also one of the reasons why they lose their vigor. And they also become prone to infections, so they are more susceptible to infections as compared to the other plants because they are genetically composed that way. Alright, now let us check out these questions over here. What is a synapse? What is a synapse? Now, synapse is a junction between two nerves, between two neurons, where through which the communication between the two neurons takes place, as in the nerve impulses passes from one neuron to another through this junction. That is the synapse. Now, state two functions of spinal cord. Now, many of you, I do not know why, have written that they help us to keep our body straight or help us to maintain our body posture. That is not what the spinal cord does. That is what the vertebral column does. So, spinal cord is responsible for reflex action. The difference over here is the spinal cord here refers to the part of the nervous system, not a part of the skeletal system. So it is responsible for the reflex action, as well as it is responsible for conveying messages to and from the brain. So any message that comes from the brain and it needs to be conveyed to other part of the body, that function is performed by the spinal cord. Or any message which comes from the any of the sensory organs and needs to be conveyed to the brain, that function is also done by the spinal cord, right? Describe briefly the internal structure of the human heart. So I have got a simple diagram over here. So all that you are supposed to mention over here, this was just for 2 marks. So all you had to mention was these 4 chambers of the heart. It is made up of 4 chambers. Then you had to mention this septum, that these the heart, the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood is totally separated via a septum, so that there is no mixing of the blood. Then you had to mention about the auricles or the atria being the receiving chambers, and the ventricles, left ventricle and the right ventricle, the ventricles being the distributive chambers. So that is what you were supposed to mention. And then you could have mentioned the great blood vessels additionally. There are these 4 major blood vessels that are there: the aorta, the pulmonary artery, and the blood vessels that are there. And then the valves you could have mentioned, but because it was just of 2 marks, even if you mentioned these 4, the vena cava and the aorta and this pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein, the major blood vessels that are there, superior vena cava, inferior vena cava, aorta, pulmonary vein, pulmonary artery, and this one. And just you could have mentioned that their names. Then the chambers. Out of these, if you have the valves, the bicuspid and the tricuspid valves, if you mentioned even even two of these points, where it gives a brief idea about how the heart is made up, what is the structure of the heart as such, so you can get full marks on that. Now we come to the next part, which is mention any two benefits of staying healthy. Now many of you got confused over here and you wrote how to stay healthy. Do exercise, eat, do not eat junk food, then stay healthy. It does not talk about ways of staying healthy. It talks about two benefits of staying healthy, as in what you will benefit from staying healthy. If you are healthy, what is the good thing about it? That is what you were supposed to mention over here. So the things which you can mention about being healthy is that you become more productive. That means you can do your work more efficiently, more productive, more efficient. If you are ill, if you are unhealthy, then of course you would not be able to work to the best of your abilities. So it makes you more productive, it makes you more efficient, and it helps you get better in physical activities. If you are healthy, you get better in daily physical activities, your physical fitness is improved, and you are able to enjoy life in a good way. So if you are ill all the time, then of course you do not get to enjoy life as it is. So you live your life in a good way, and you are also able to enjoy the good life. Now let us talk about, define the following: pisciculture, green revolution, and apiculture. Now when we are talking about pisciculture, know that pisciculture is about the rearing and breeding of fishes. We care for them. So breeding, rearing, caring of fishes for large scale production. Just as in apiculture, it is also for large scale production, right? Large scale production of what? In apiculture it is honey, wax, and so many associated products. So this is, in apiculture, it is the rearing of bees on a large scale for the production of honey, wax for commercial purposes. Now when we come to the green revolution is the revolution that was brought about to increase the production of crops. Let me write it in green over there. So increase, so it is increase in crop production, increase in the crop production, so that the deficiency of food crops, so that no one goes hungry over there. So how do we increase the crop production? By high yielding variety seeds, HYV seeds, and disease, combining these seeds with disease resistant crops. So the crops are lost because of these diseases, because they are not cared for much. So these high yielding variety crops, they will give, as the name itself suggests, high yielding. So in the same plot of farm, they would give more crop as compared to the traditional seeds. So these seeds, and they were combined with the disease resistant crops to maximize the production of food crops, basically to satisfy the hunger of the people of our country, or any country where there is starvation, where people are going hungry because they do not have enough food to eat. So that is where the green revolution comes into being. Define the following terms with examples. Now, food crop and cash crop, I do not know why many of you wrote the difference as Rabi crop and this Kharif crop. It is not the Rabi crop and Kharif crop. We are talking about food crop. So, this is crop which is used as food, which is used as a part of the food, or the part of a meal. So they are used, they are for edible purposes. So they are meant to be eaten. So these food crops are for edible purposes. So here there are cereals, pulses, fruits, vegetables. These are all food crops, right? Because they are meant for eating. Now, when we are talking about cash crops, they are commercial crops. Commercial crop means when you sell them in market, you will get good price for them. So, the commercial crops are sugarcane, then tea, coffee, tobacco, and so on. So, these are the commercial crops. You had to give examples of these as well. Now, let us talk about the advantages of organic farming. Let me just shift it slightly over here so that we get some space away. What are the 4 advantages of organic farming? Before that, let me just take up these pyramids. Pyramid of numbers you had to draw. So you have 1, 2, the inverted pyramid, the spindle shaped pyramid, the upright pyramid. Any of these pyramids you could have drawn. You just needed to draw any one type of pyramid and you would get full marks for that. You don't need to draw the animals and all. Just needed to mention producers, herbivores, parasites like, and then hyperparasites, or if you're talking about a tree, so producers it's a tree, and then herbivores it's like birds, carnivores it's like eagle, so on. So all you need to mention over here in the names, not the diagram was not required, only the shape of the pyramid was necessary. So always remember that the base of the pyramid is occupied by the producers. So many of you made a pyramid with the shape is correct, but what goes there in each trophic level is absolutely incorrect. So you would not get marks for that. Now let us come back to 4 advantages of organic farming. So what are the advantages of organic farming? So when we have organic farming, first and foremost, let me use a different color over here. So organic farming, first and foremost, soil fertility is maintained. Soil fertility is maintained, right? Because we are not adding any chemicals to it. So soil fertility is maintained, soil pollution is reduced. Soil pollution is reduced. Then what else is there? We can utilize our natural resources. Natural resources are utilized. Natural resources are utilized. Then what else is there? Pests, insects are better controlled, right? Are better controlled. Then so many these 4 you can write. Then you can also mention pesticide free crops. Crops are pesticide free. Then cost of agricultural production is less agricultural production cost. Any of these points you can mention when you are talking about the advantages of organic farming. Let us talk about the categories of bees and what is their role. So when we are talking about, we have the queen bee, the drone bee and the worker bee. So the queen bee is responsible. The queen bee is the one that lays the eggs. Worker bee, as we know, that they are the one who are doing the work actively. So they are the active workers, whereas the drone bees are the male bees which do not work, and their sole purpose is to help the queen to lay eggs. So these are the three categories of the bees. How are scavengers different from detritivores? Now, when we are talking about scavengers, we are talking about organisms that feed on, let me talk about scavengers first. They feed on dead organisms. Now, dead organisms means that have died recently. So they feed on the flesh of the dead organisms. That is what the scavengers do. They get their nutrition from dead organisms, dead plants or animals. Now when we talk about the detritivores feed on decaying and decomposing dead organisms. They would be decaying and decomposing only after they are dead. So once the scavengers have fed on them, as they start to decay and decompose, the detritivores, they feed on these organisms, right? So that is where the difference is. Now let us talk about the father of Green Revolution. Now many of you wrote MS Swaminathan, but MS Swaminathan is the father of Green Revolution in India. When we are talking about the father of Green Revolution overall, he was Dr. Norman, what is his name? Dr. Norman Borlaug. He is known as the father of Green Revolution. Now, because your textbook specifically mentions the name of Dr. Norman Borlaug, I expect you to write his name as well. If you have written Dr. MS Swaminathan along with his name as well, then it's perfectly fine. But if you have written only Dr. MS Swaminathan's name, because it is not mentioned over here, father of Green Revolution in India, so you will not get marks for that. Location and function of cerebrum and medulla oblongata. So question number 3, cerebrum and medulla oblongata. Now cerebrum is the uppermost part of brain, right? We all know that. It is the uppermost part of brain, cerebrum. And what is its function? It is responsible for so many things. Thinking, many of you got it right. Reasoning, then memory, right? Then intelligence. Any of these you could have written. Intelligence, learning, then willpower. All these are the functions of all these are taken care of by the cerebrum. Now when we talk about medulla oblongata, let me use it over the space over here. So when we are talking about medulla oblongata, then medulla oblongata, where is it found? Between cerebellum and spinal cord. So it is the lowest part of the brain. It is the lowest part of the brain where it is found between cerebellum and spinal cord. What is the function of medulla oblongata? What does medulla oblongata take care of? It takes, first and foremost, it is the connection between the brain and the spinal cord. So it transmits all the information from the brain to the spinal cord. Also, it is responsible for heartbeat, controlling the heartbeat and actions like coughing. It also controls sleep. Your sleep pattern is controlled by the medulla oblongata. Then also it controls the various activities of it carries out various activities of the cerebrum, right? So the medulla oblongata functions in these ways. Now let us talk about the various breeds of hen. So 3 breeds of hen, if we are talking about them, then we have the 3 breeds are indigenous breed, first and foremost. Indigenous breed, the Asil, Busra, Then there were the exotic breeds, where we had the white leghorn, and Rhode Island. It is also one of the names of the exotic breeds of hens. Then we have the mixed breed or the improved crossbreeds. Imported crossbreeds, improved crossbreeds. So mixed or crossbreeds. They have numbers basically. So it is B77, HH 260. Another one was ILS 82 and so on. So these are the various types of breeds of hen and their names. The last question was draw a neat and label diagram of a neuron. I did not get a diagram of a neuron because in class 7 you have done the diagram of a neuron, and in class 8 also you have done the diagram of a neuron. So all of you know, you can check in your textbook as to how you have drawn, and you will be able to understand whether you have drawn it correctly or not. So that was that for the solutions over here. I hope that you got all the answers. Thank you so much for watching.